in the context of carbon projects to look at why biodiversity certification might be needed in certain contexts, not all, but certainly in high biodiversity areas and areas of high biodiversity value. And then we're going to hear about how to apply the Global Biodiversity Standard, which has been developed over the last 3 or 4 years, co-developed by BGCI, the Society for Ecological Restoration, the World Agroforestry Center, Traffic, Plan Vivo, Ecosia, and various other partners. So what I should do before we kick off is to introduce our speakers. So I will take you in turn, if I may. Toral, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Toral. I'm the biodiversity lead at Plan Vivo, and I've been supporting on the development of TGBS primarily through Criteria 3, which focuses on community engagement and local stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Anko.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Anko Stilma, and I'm a forester with over 20 years of experience in Bolivia. And we're working with the Global Biodiversity Standard.
Thank you. Sounds like you've got an echo there that hopefully we can sort out before you talk for longer. Marcello.
Hi everyone, my name is Marcello De Vitis. I work for Botanic Gardens Conservation International, supporting the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Standard. Thanks.
Thank you. David?
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. David Bartholomew. I'm currently the CEO of the Global Biodiversity Standard and also working with Botanic Gardens Conservation International to develop the methodology and implement the standard across the world.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tambor.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Mr. Tambor, representing the Synjuk, the Federation of the Khasi Indigenous Traditional Institution, where we have been implementing the first RED project in India for community action under the Plan Vivo standard.
Great, thank you. Sounds like you have an echo there too, but we're going to hear from all of our speakers in the panel discussion. But we're going to kick off with a presentation which is an introduction to the Global Biodiversity Standard that will set the scene from David. David, can I hand over to you?
Great, thank you, Paul, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background to what we've been doing here at the Global Biodiversity Standard and to frame it a little bit about how it can provide that independent biodiversity assurance for the carbon market. So first of all, just an introduction to what is the Global Biodiversity Standard. Well, it's an assurance-based standard that is designed to really provide credibility and recognition to projects that deliver for biodiversity. It's all about recognizing projects that protect, enhance, and restore biodiversity. So it's all about measuring the uplift of biodiversity at a site. The standard issues site-based certification to projects that can demonstrate that they have improved biodiversity. And we also run alongside this a mentoring program to help projects to get up to the level that they would need to be at to gain the certification. As Paul mentioned, this standard was developed by a large global coalition of organizations that cover a diverse range of specialties within biodiversity. For example, Botanic Gardens Conservation International bring our expertise from the plant conservation community, but we also have partners like Plan Vivo bringing their expertise from the carbon markets as well that have helped develop this standard. We developed the Global Biodiversity Standard really to address the need for an independent, high integrity standard that could provide that assurance for a wide range of nature-based solution projects. This is not just for the carbon market, but carbon market is definitely one of the users that could apply the Global Biodiversity Standard to their sites. The idea is all about focusing more rigorously on how biodiversity is changing. It's not just about presenting safeguards and minimum requirements about avoiding the loss of biodiversity or avoiding the introduction of non-native species, but it's all about measuring how biodiversity is changing at the site, making sure that there's more native species, making sure that you're also building that adaptive capacity into the landscapes and providing that permanence as well, that the biodiversity can stay and recover for the long term. There's really a gap at present in this market. There's not really a site-based certification that goes into as much rigor or detail that we do at the Global Biodiversity Standard. And as a consequence, there's really this uncertainty that remains for financiers of nature-based solution projects, including the buyers of carbon credits, about what is the impact that the projects they're funding are having on biodiversity. The Global Biodiversity Standard can really fill that gap by providing that independent assurance. It can go alongside existing carbon certifications and really strengthen them to show that actually it's not just delivering for carbon, but also delivering for biodiversity. So as I mentioned, the standard is a site-based certification. So the idea is that we're assessing restoration projects rather than assessing an organization. We are applying this to many different nature-based solution projects. As I mentioned, it's not just the carbon market, but it's any project that is able to show that they have improved biodiversity at the site. Our role is to really provide that independent assurance to the financiers that what you're delivering is positive for biodiversity, and also making sure that there is visibility around biodiversity within these projects. At present, there remains a lack of confidence in many buyers about the impacts on biodiversity, and the standard can really provide that additional verification layer to really prove that biodiversity is not just being protected and maintained, but actually also improving at these sites. The aim is really to provide that confidence where biodiversity outcomes have been realized, strengthen the credibility of these projects. But the idea is not for us to deliver those projects, to deliver the finance for those projects, or to even issue credits. The idea is just to strengthen the claims that can be made from pre-existing projects and equally strengthen the claims of carbon credits. Our approach has been to take a high integrity focus and to really focus on the outcomes that have been achieved for biodiversity. We use a hybrid methodology to assess sites, combining both remote sensing and field surveys of a project, in addition to reviewing documentation that is provided by the applicant. Unlike many other standards, we provide the assessors and the verification team that will go to the site to deliver it, maintaining this standardized level of quality assurance and quality control. We have a tiered certification approach to really allow projects to show their impact and to continually show increased impact over time. We have a methodology that has been peer-reviewed by more than 50 experts and has also had the wide-level endorsement from biodiversity leaders. The standard is applicable across all terrestrial ecosystems, but it is also modified according to where you are to provide locally relevant indicators. And it's worth to say that we've aligned the standard also with international policy around restoration. As I mentioned, the assessments are delivered by local biodiversity experts. So we have developed partnerships now with biodiversity organizations across 15 countries, and we've now certified over 200 people to act as our assessors. Here you can see our distribution of the map in lime green, and with new countries in the pipeline for those that are in the pale blue. How does it work then? So what we do is we assess projects against 8 criteria. Each of these criteria is scored out of 10, and then a minimum score is required to gain the certification. What we do is we first make sure that you're selecting the appropriate sites to restore, so you're not planting forests where a grassland ecosystem should exist, for example. Then in criterion 2, we're assessing that you're enhancing the protection of the sites, ensuring that pre-existing biodiversity, but also biodiversity returned through the project, is maintained and is permanent at the site. Then we assess the social impacts through criterion 3. In criterion 4, we assess whether you're maximizing the recovery of biodiversity, particularly through the introduction of native species. Criterion 5 is about avoiding non-native and invasive species. Criterion 6 is making sure that projects also think about extinction risk, so thinking about including, wherever possible, threatened and rare species. Criterion 7 is all about ensuring there's adaptive capacity, the project can respond to climate change and be resilient over time. And lastly, in criterion 8, it's about including good monitoring, evaluation, and adaptive management practices. The standard has 4 core methodology components. The vast majority that's related to the key biodiversity criteria are all assessed using the Certified Ecological Restoration's 5-star system that is widely adopted and recognized in their international standards and principles for restoration. The methodology around protection is based on the IUCN protected area categories. The methodology around the social benefits is also related to the Society for Ecological Restoration's social benefits wheel. And lastly, we've used the UN Decade Standards of Practice to assess what is good monitoring, evaluation, and adaptive management. As I mentioned, the standard is increasingly being recognized as one of the highest integrity standards on the market for biodiversity. We've had the support from the Convention on Biological Diversity, their former executive secretary at the time, the Director General of IUCN, and also scientists and academics that are working in this space in restoration and biodiversity. The standard can be applied across many different use cases, and 2 of these key use cases that we're going to present today are both ARR carbon projects and also REDD+ projects. And these are 2 examples that we have been trialing with Plan Vivo. With that, I'm going to pass over to Toral, who's going to explain a little bit more about how the Global Biodiversity Standard has combined with the Plan Vivo carbon standard.
Thanks, David. So yeah, just very simply as outlined in this table, the primary purpose of TGBS is to certify and mentor restoration and or tree planting or other similar types of projects for their biodiversity impact and outcomes, whilst PV Climate, the Plan Vivo carbon standard, is specifically aimed at improving access to the voluntary carbon market for community-based projects through the issuance and tradability of carbon credits. The output for TGBS is a site-based certification, which is issued under different tiers, as you heard David explain. And for PV Climate, these are known as Plan Vivo certificates, which represent a ton of carbon dioxide. You've already heard about the methodology related to TGBS, whilst PV Climate has a range of carbon accounting methodologies and also requirements for community and social engagement relative or respective to the project type and the interventions being applied. And in terms of the application of the 2 approaches, as you know, TGBS can be applied to a broad range of project types, while PV Climate is specifically targeting carbon offsetting with social and biodiversity impact, but primarily for community-led or community-managed projects. Next slide, please. So how do they work together? TGBS provides an additional layer of accreditation to PV Climate projects, which is independently assessed and verifying those biodiversity benefits. It allows an improved restoration design if that is of interest to the project, including species selection and definitely monitoring. And it also allows these projects to access a wealth of knowledge through the regional hubs, through monitoring and other expertise. But most of all, it allows additional biodiversity accreditation that support the biodiversity claims within those carbon projects. Okay, I think I can pass it on to Anko now, who's going to take over the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I would like to proceed with an example of a TGBS and Plan Vivo certified project, which is established by, or which is implemented by Sicirec Bolivia and supported as well by the Bosques Foundation. Please, next slide. Yeah, so probably first to get a little bit of an overview of, okay, what are the areas where we are working in? It's an area where there's a lot of slash and burn going on. Agriculture is, let's say, moving the forestry frontier, or we're moving the agricultural frontier, and there's a lot of biodiversity loss, and we want to revert that. Yeah, please. Just to put it in a context on biodiversity loss, in Bolivia, it's according to the Global Forest Watch, it's one of the area of the countries with a very high deforestation rate. And what I said, that's actually what we want to convert, and we want to look for alternative approaches. Yes, please. So this is actually what deforestation looks like since the 90s until 2020. What's a lot of deforestation. These are actually the areas where we're working on with smallholders. Deforestation is caused generally here by smallholders. And what we were looking at is how can we come to an alternative approach, conserving biodiversity and forests at one hand, and also restoring in these sites the biodiversity. Yes, please. Go on. Yeah. So what we have in these areas are very high deforestation rates, the highest deforestation rates per capita in worldwide. There's a tendency from agriculture to non-conservation and forest. And actually what we are looking for is investments which are sustainable and which are supporting and restoring biodiversity. Yes, please. Yeah. So this is how it looks like. This is just an area which 3-4 years before I took this picture was still a primary forest, and now this is what it is. And these are actually the basis on what we're looking at. Yeah. Yes, please. So Sicirec Bolivia, it's a company. Just to give a very short introduction, we're established in 2006. And we wanted to give and provide smallholders an alternative to ongoing deforestation and ongoing biodiversity loss by doing a different way of business. And currently, we're working with about 2,600 farmers and a team of about 55 persons in the field. Yes, please. So these are the areas where we are working with about 4,000 hectares of restored land with 2,600 farmers in an area in Bolivia, which is actually the area where you go from the Andes region into the lowlands. It's an area with a very high rainfall and with a lot of smallholders and with a lot of deforestation going on in this area. Yes, please. So when we were looking for alternatives, actually we were looking we're looking at different aspects, and we had some different considerations. We said if we want to combat deforestation, we need to look to alternative developments. If we want to restore land, we have to look why land has been deforested. And that was basically because of agricultural production. So we should look agricultural production and timber production. So we should look to alternative production methods with restore land, with conserve land, a forest, but at the same way also generate income for the local communities. At the other hand, there is a high demand on climate change mitigation measures, adaptation measures. Pests and diseases are growing in the area, so we need systems which have a higher resilience against pest diseases and climate change. And we want to revert this biodiversity loss into a biodiversity increase. So that were basically the main ideas behind establishing what we now call the ArBolivia project. Yes, please. So actually the main question is, can we be sustainable? Can we have sustainable land use and income restoring and conserving forest? That was the main question, and that is what we would like to answer. So what we started with was a tree planting alternative with agroforestry, with a business approach, and also with an investment approach. So what we tried to attract were green investors, impact investors, willing to establish a green business with a very high social and environmental impact. And that's also where it comes to certification, because these impact investors, whether it is for climate purposes or it's for having sustainable revenues, but they also want to know if their financial support, if their financial investments are really supporting what we are aiming on, which is increased biodiversity and increased social benefits. And that was, let's say, one of the main issues of establishing the project. And now, yes, we can say that we have established about 3,200 hectares of woodlots. We have 1,000 hectares with agroforestry system, with 2,600 farmers, more or less generating this impact and restoring land. Yeah. Yes, please. So that means that we are all working on landscape restoration, but at the other hand, we need also smallholders to be convinced that this is a better way of land use, and agroforestry and forest restoration is a better way of land use than cattle farming, soybeans, or slash and burn agriculture. At the other hand, we also need long-term financial commitments. And these long-term financial commitments we can only get if we have measurable social, economic, and ecological impacts, and that we have a comprehensive monitoring system in place. And that's where actually the certifications are coming in. Yes, please. So our investment strategies, let's say, how can we attract investments which make a real impact, which are really restoring biodiversity, that are impact investors, that also buyers of our products, coffee, cacao, which are we producing, is based on loans. It's also based on climate contributions, and all these, let's say, mix of investors and clients and we have, they really need to know that the impact we are making is a real impact and it's measurable. Yes, please. So this is a bit how, let's say, our activities are look like in the field. You saw this picture before of cattle farmland. This is, let's say, how it also can be done. This is on previous cattle land, and this is an agroforestry system with native tree species, with organic production of coffee, and we do the same with cacao and some other agricultural crops, all based on, okay, can we restore land, and on the same way also can we support economic and social development in the region. Yeah. Yes, please. So this is also in the area, let's say, protecting water sources. Yes, please. And what is important actually is in this part of our financial and investment strategies, is that we can look for impact investors. These impact investors are interested in developing supply chains for wood, coffee, and cacao. But we also need to generate secure markets, and by generating secure markets, buyers, clients on the market, they probably will pay a little bit more. But if they pay more, they also want to have that they make a real impact, and that climate contributions are real. So that's why we have Plan Vivo for, but also that biodiversity increment is real and measurable, and they're not just paying more for their coffee, their cacao, or it's not just an investment which does not have a measurable impact. Yes, please. So that's where Plan Vivo and the biodiversity standard are coming in. We have been able to develop, to certify. We have the project as a whole is certified on the Plan Vivo standard, and since there was actually a need not only to show how much carbon is stored, but also what are the other impacts, we entered into the Global Biodiversity Standard. Which show, based on the criteria and indicators, that we have measurable income, that we have, and that we can show to investors what are the social and ecological outcomes of the projects. It also provides us self-guidance to improve our activities, also in discussions with farmers. And it also, not only to clients, to the products from coffee, cacao, or wood, it shows that it is really sustainable produced, but also to the investors itself. We can show them that we have accountable effects, and that improves, let's say, the access to finance. Yeah, yes, please. So actually the interesting thing on the global on the biodiversity standard in this case is that we have I don't go through all the criteria, but it's a very interesting balance between different aspects of criteria which can be made. So just to give an example, it's a balance between social and real hardcore biodiversity issues, and by balancing this, you can also show the real impact of your project. Yes, please. And that helps us to put our products on the market. We're selling our products of coffee as forest-grown products with a high benefit to biodiversity and with a high social benefit. Yeah, yes, please. And this is how it looks like as well in the field, just to get an impression. So it's all organic, since the tree species themselves, native tree species, are also nitrogen fixes, and there's no extra fertilizer, no organic other fertilizer needed anymore. And we also could show that we have been proven that the soil conditions have been improved quite a lot if it comes to organic matter and live microfauna. So this is another impression. Yes, please go on. Yeah. This is the cacao production, also all shade grown with native tree species as shade trees, which are also improving the soil, improving microfauna, and being part of the production system. Yes, please. Yeah, this is let's say an area, a typical area where part of the forest is getting burned by slash and burn. The other part of the forest is in process of degradation. And this is exactly what we want to revert, what we want to convert into agroforestry, and those pieces of forest which are still there, we would like to protect as much as possible. Yes, please. There's another example of an area just in the red part. It's being restored, and in this case with native tree species and coffee. Yes, please. And this is again how it looks like after 3 years already. So that's quite a quick impact as well on the different conditions. Yes, please. And actually, what we are showing with Plan Vivo and the Global Biodiversity Standard is that that we can have economic growth, that we can have social development, and that by restoring and conserving nature. And that's, I think, for us, let's say, the most important thing, that we can show it with clear criteria and indicators. So not just nice pictures or stories, but also based on good and high quality criteria and indicators. Yes, please. Okay. So yeah, that's basically what I would like to share. If you want to have more information, you can just send me a message. You can also get a better impression of our work by watching a video we made and which is available on YouTube. So thank you, and I will pass it back to Toral.
Thanks very much, Anko, for a very informative and useful presentation on how TGBS has been applied. We're going to move to our panel discussion now, but and I see there's a nice sort of set of questions that are coming up in the Q&A, so thank you everybody for that, and we will get to those. But we're going to start with a sort of structured panel discussion and with some questions, which actually I think will touch on some of the issues raised in the Q&A. So I'm going to start with Toral, and Toral, there's a few questions in the Q&A related to trying to understand how the Global Biodiversity Standard can work alongside carbon projects. Can you perhaps expand on that?
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks, Anko, for a great presentation. So I think it really depends on the carbon standard. So where there's flexibility and perhaps biodiversity is not already included or embedded within the project design, then this is where TGBS provides an opportunity to explicitly measure and monitor that biodiversity. So for carbon projects that are already certified under a standard that focuses primarily on emission reductions or removals, TGBS is there to offer a complementary layer of assurance. So as I said in some of the questions in the Q&A, TGBS doesn't generate any type of credit or tradable asset per se, and therefore it avoids any confusions or risks around double counting, and instead offers that opportunity to strengthen the credibility or the biodiversity related claims for the carbon. Another area that TGBS offers a benefit to carbon projects is around market positioning. So, for example, through ratings or ratings from third parties, that additional layer of biodiversity monitoring can really support improvement in that rating or other sort of due diligence outcomes that are potentially required from demand actors. And I think most importantly is around alignment with future emerging either disclosure frameworks or regulatory frameworks that are becoming more prominent on corporate radar, and also alignment or demonstrating commitment with global goals, particularly in line with the Global Biodiversity Framework. So in a sense, I see there's loads of opportunity for carbon projects to embed or integrate TGBS within their certification process. And in my opinion, this allows for what I call explicit bundling of the biodiversity outcomes, where biodiversity is not already embedded in their carbon project. So from the perspective of PV climate, where the Plan Vivo carbon standard is holistic and already requires projects to track and monitor, obviously on carbon indicators, but other indicators around livelihood and ecosystem, that's where I would say biodiversity is implicitly bundled, and there is opportunity to improve that through a separate accreditation. But particularly where biodiversity is not included, TGBS can play an even stronger complementary role there by providing that additional independent and a certified standardized way to demonstrate the biodiversity outcomes. So yeah, I see the two working really closely together in the wider carbon market. and it could be used as a bolt-on, hopefully adding that premium or that extra price tag to the carbon.
Thanks, Toral. So that's starting to answer the question of why. Why would why would practitioners want to have biodiversity certification as well as carbon? And just sort of growing that theme, the next question is for David. Um, how does TGBS optimize biodiversity in the voluntary carbon market, and why is that important?
So within the Global Biodiversity Standard, we're really heavily focused on making sure that the native biodiversity is recovered through the project. So actually, it may sound simple, but the very first step is to really make sure that you are identifying what is the native ecosystem, what is the reference that we need to be trying to aim towards. What are the right species that should be located in that location, and how can we allow them to recover? And that's not just focused necessarily on the tree species, but equally all other aspects of biodiversity that may be recovered through a carbon project, whether that's other plants or other animal diversity as well. The way that the Global Biodiversity Standard is structured is really to make sure that we dig into lots of different aspects of biodiversity. Are you improving the connectivity of your landscape, allowing for exchanges of biodiversity? Are you also removing the presence of non-native and invasive species that might cause harm and actually might reduce the resilience of the project, potentially leaving even the carbon that is being sequestered to be vulnerable to disasters like fire, pests and diseases, etc. Native species are typically more resilient and therefore can help recover that. And actually, there was recently a report from JP Morgan Chase and Carbon Direct that really identified what are the key principles that carbon projects need to optimize for biodiversity. And it was found that most carbon standards don't recognize all of those aspects yet. And so I think this is really the way that the Global Biodiversity Standard can provide that additional assurance, recognizing those aspects. And as Toral mentioned, really providing that additional assurance layer to the buyers, showing that you've not just recovered carbon, but also biodiversity, and therefore the whole project is going to be resilient to environmental change in the future.
Thanks, David. And I'm going to turn to Tambor next, who's got experience of applying TGBS in a REDD+ context in India. What has your experience been like, Tambor? And maybe you can give us an indication of how TGBS has been useful in your particular project.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry for this. I don't know what happened. I will talk slow. So, first of all, I would like to thank TGBS that has come to do the research here. When they come here, we got to know that the REDD project also can be.
Yeah, maybe you can check. Maybe you're logged on twice to Zoom because we're getting an echo there.
Yeah.
That sounds better.
Okay.
That's
Can
better,
you see,
I think.
can you see me now?
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, we'd like to thank the TGBS because they have come here to do the research and they also make us confident that the REDD+ project also contribute a lot of not just identifying the species but all the biotics that is present. And by using the camera traps also we are really we can also showcasing that the REDD+ project with the help of the biodiversity standard will be enhancing not just for the finding out, but also I think it will also help us to engage with the buyers, with the partners to see that the project is very much confident and very much improving year by year.
Thank you. And you make an important point that that TGBS is helping to measure all biodiversity and biodiversity uplift, which is obviously important to different stakeholders. Anko, I'm going to come back to you. And are there any kind of lessons that you would like to share from TGBS and getting that certification?
Yeah, I think the main general lessons is what I mentioned already, that we clearly show that there can be a synergy between economic growth, social development, and biodiversity. That's what we have been able to implement with Sicirec Bolivia in Bolivia. But it actually goes further than only and what is nice pictures or nice stories. That it is needed if you want to attract investors, if you want to sell your product, that you also have clear criteria, what you can show. Okay, this is what we actually are doing, and this is the uplift of our activities. At the other hand, and it was also helpful for us as an organization, we have almost 20 years of experience in implementing and working with smallholders. But by going through this process, it helps us also to identify, okay, where are more or less the gaps in getting more biodiversity, and sometimes there are relatively simple things as weeding in the right season, and which can be done relatively quick to get a higher, more biodiversity in your woodlots and in your agroforestry system. And the other thing, which is I think it's very interesting, is that by being able to showcase this, we can also open markets for our products, and that's basically the lesson we learn from that. I mean, there's always a thing as cost benefits if it comes to certification, but I think it's needed to show that the impact you have is a real one.
Great, thank you. And you're touching there on the fact that that TGBS is also a mentoring system. So it's not a you pass, you fail. It's actually working with the TGBS field teams and experts to get better biodiversity outcomes together. And that's been a principle right from the beginning. And it's also the reason, of course, that we have a model which utilizes local biodiversity expertise. It's not flying in a consultant from the north who might then subcontract to another consultant and so on. It's actually employing people who know their own biodiversity best, and are able to provide mentoring support as well as assessment. Okay, I think time for um, our audience. Marcello, do you want to pick out any questions that we've got from the audience that panelists might like to answer?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so we got a few interesting questions. Actually, I wanted to tell the audience that we received a few questions that are pretty similar. What's the difference between TGBS and Plant Vivo Nature? And Toral already answered that question. And I'm sorry that by mistake I deleted one of these questions about this difference. Sorry about that. But you can see if you open the chat and you look, the Q&A window, and you look at the answered questions, you can find Toral's answer to that question. So I would start with this question that I think David would be the best to answer to. So how are you balancing the need for ecological rigor in assessing biodiversity gain with the need to make the scheme as rapid, affordable, and attractive to as many as possible?
Great, thanks for that really good question. Our approach with the Global Biodiversity Standard is always to balance the level of rigor, but also with realistic expectations of what is affordable, what can the market take with respect to the biodiversity assessment process, and how detailed and rigorous does that need to be. We identified that we don't need to measure every different piece of biodiversity. Instead, what we do is we really select core indicators that have to be assessed, and those indicators actually will change depending on where the project is located. So in some places, it might be that it's tree diversity that is really the core indicator group about the plants that we have to assess. In others cases, it might be different. It might be the herbaceous plants that are really critical to being assessed. That is always amended according to where we're at. We're also increasingly integrating, wherever possible, technological approaches as well. As projects start to scale, the dependence on remote sensing, the dependence on use of things like bioacoustic sensors, camera traps are going to become increasingly important. That helps us keep the cost down, but equally to provide us to give a really robust understanding of how biodiversity is being affected. So in short, essentially what we're trying to do is to really balance that trade-off between making sure we collect enough detail to really give a robust verification of biodiversity, but at the same time being realistic, trying to keep costs down, and also making sure that we don't overburden the market with additional costs of certification that ultimately would affect their ability to enter the marketplace.
Thanks, David. And just to add to that, I think this was one of the purposes of very rigorous testing of the Global Biodiversity Standard with over 100 different kinds of projects on 3 continents in the first few years, was the recognition that we can set these criteria that we want to measure and so on, and that can be done using the Society for Ecological Restoration's recovery wheel, for example, but it needs to be practicable. It needs to work in different environments, and it needs to be something that can be done with rigor in days rather than in weeks. So it has been a balancing act, but I'm very confident that we've maintained that rigor, but also made it very practicable for not only for the assessors, but also for practitioners who can understand what is being monitored and also can take on that monitoring themselves under Criterion 8. Good, thank you. Marcello, any other questions to share?
Yes. So the next one, I think it's for Toral. Will all the project under Plan Vivo have the same opportunity to be certified also with the Global Biodiversity Standard, or there is any specific requirements, like for example, an average annual emission reduction or removal?
Yeah, thanks, Marcelo. Yeah, good question. So no, there are no additional requirements or specifics for any one project to meet. It's an optional add-on or bolt-on certification for PV climate projects. So if you're interested in this, Plan Viva are very happy to support and facilitate you acquiring that certification. Obviously, there are requirements under both PV Climate and TGBS that need to be met in order to achieve those certifications, but the process is equal and there aren't any additional requirements, so all projects do have the same opportunity. And they can be, each certification can be independently pursued in the sense the timelines are different and you can sort of be doing them in parallel or one after the other. It's sort of open to the project design and the ambition of the project.
Thanks, Toral. Marcello.
Yeah, the next one is for Anko. People are interested in your organization. So if you can share a few more information about your organization, especially how you involve the communities, the local communities in the monitoring of the biodiversity.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, good point. Yeah, our organization Sicirec Bolivia has started as I mentioned, 2006 with basically the establishment of woodlots with smallholders and indigenous communities. In first, it was basically on reforestation, so tree planting, and later on we saw actually if we want to make a real difference for what is the developments in agriculture, we need to change that and make and do something more on agriculture as well. So that's where we included agroforestry in the concept, and we also included let's say chain development. and chain development. So we can do reforestation, but we have to work in a social economic area. These people have to live from something, and can we make that sustainable? So we are a social impact company, Bolivian based, and that also means that we are a company. So we ourselves are also in some states we will make some profit. So on some states we're making small profits, and these profits are also incorporated again in activities which are improving social or the environmental conditions in the area we work for. So since 2006, let's say we implemented with nowadays 2,600 farmers our activities. A few years ago, we have been happy to export the first container loads of coffee and cacao to Europe, basically to the Netherlands and Germany. And that's also where we saw, okay, there is a high demand for products, or there is at least a demand for products which have a high social and environmental benefits. And that's what we worked further on, and actually that's what we are working on. We are working with let's say with over 50 people in the field, 2,600 farmers. These farmers themselves are organized in forest committees, and they are doing part of the social as well as from the environmental monitoring. So it's a mixed based. They are part of monitoring what is going on. More the technical aspects, let's say, if it comes to biodiversity, so we work a lot with students from the area, also from Europe, doing this type of work. So it's a mix of, let's say, more community-based monitoring and expert-based monitoring. I can tell more about it, but if there's
Thanks,
if there
Anko.
are any questions left, we can do it as well.
Yeah, I'm getting we've got, like, I can see 26 unanswered questions in the Q&A, so it's all adding up. There's quite a few on costs. Marcello, was that something you wanted to ask about next?
Yeah, let's see if we have time for, there are a lot of great questions in the Q&A. Let's see if we have time for at least a couple of them. I'm trying to kind of like put together similar questions. So yeah, we have a question. We had like a few questions about costs. So I guess this could be shared, the answer could be shared by David, Paul, Toral. So what are the certification costs? Can you give an estimate also of if there is an additional costs of adding TGBS accreditation to a Plan Vivo project? And also, if for small conservation restoration organizations, the audience is asking if there is any assistance they can access to pursue both TGBS or Plan Vivo certifications like Plan Vivo Nature. Thanks.
David, I pass all difficult questions to David on principle. David, maybe you could
I can
start
take
with
that
this.
one. So it's worth to say that we don't set a standard cost for all projects. Instead, what we do is we tailor the cost according to the different conditions. As you can imagine, every project is different in terms of its size, its complexity, etc. All of that gets built into working out the cost. But we try to keep it as competitive as possible. It's also why we're using the local teams to deliver the verification process and not flying in international consultants to do this. The initial upfront costs can sometimes seem daunting, but actually sometimes if you think about how much monitoring and verification is involved for some carbon standards where actually you have to internally recruit your own team to deliver all of that monitoring and verification. Actually, many of the times the cost may be less for you just to bring in the independent experts like we do for the Global Biodiversity Standard, because they're already trained, they know how to do this, and they are really efficient with collecting the data. So that is part of the reason why we have this cost structure. We have different pricing also. We help out smaller entities, non-profit entities. We give them a more competitive pricing than we would to larger corporates that have greater resources and able to purchase this. We see that as really an equitable business model that we have set up.
Thank you. And I'm going to add that the Global Biodiversity Standard is a not-for-profit. So, and the same with our hubs. We seek to cover costs for us. We're all passionate about biodiversity. So there aren't value chains with for-profit companies and shareholders involved in this process. So just as a sort of rough estimate, you'd be looking at an order of magnitude less to get your biodiversity cost certified, at least an order of magnitude compared to carbon. So it is very cost effective, the method that we've got, and that's largely because biodiversity is not yet monetized. So we are very conscious of keeping costs down and making sure that obviously that we cover the realistic costs associated with carrying out the survey, but we're not looking to make profits. Marcello, anything else? Any other burning questions? Oh, we're out of time, I think, because I did want to just wrap up with one final question to Toral, which is appropriate, Plan Vivo being the host of this, and that is in 3 minutes, if you can, Toral. What is the importance of biodiversity certification in the context of carbon markets going forward, do you think, looking into the future?
Yep. Thank you for this question. And I think, I've already touched on this, and also David, Anko have already said how important it is to demonstrate that evidence to buyers, investors, and other regulators around risk management, and also the integrity of biodiversity benefits. So from the perspective of the market, it allows you to respond to that risk mitigation, particularly when lots of market actors are in this phase of understanding their impacts, understanding how they may need to report on disclosure frameworks or other regulatory requirements that are coming in. I think there's been a couple of questions in the chat around what is the price of the carbon. And although this is quite early stages, and I know Anko and Bartholomew would be happy to talk to anybody about how they're exploring this, it is something that is emerging, and demand actors will be looking more and more around what additional due diligence has the project applied in terms of verifying the biodiversity outcomes. And that is where we see that market opportunity to help differentiate your carbon project in a competitive market, stand out in potential procurement processes, and as I said before, improve your ratings, which really flags or stands you out against other projects. So that's more from a market perspective. I think from an integrity perspective, it's also really important for carbon markets to build and continue building and improving trust in the nature-based space, particularly within the voluntary carbon market, and really having approaches that are meaningful ways of showing effective alignment with our global goals for nature recovery. And really, yes, building that trust. So providing that credible mechanism for carbon markets to use, carbon projects to use to demonstrate credible or meaningful action towards nature positive. I think the other way is to understand that as buyers, as investors are going to be really focusing on that repair and restore aspect of their own operations, their supply chains, TGBS is really important to fit into that, where carbon projects are not able to deliver only offsetting or emission reductions. They're also able to provide that biodiversity assurance.
Thanks very much. Right on time as well. Have we been able to share the info@biodiversitystandard.org address with the audience? I can see it as a panelist, but if that can be shared with the audience, if you'd like to follow up with any questions, then please do email us at info@biodiversitystandard.org. Good. It's 1 o'clock where I am, something o'clock where you are, and I'd like to thank all of our panelists um, for their extremely erudite presentations and discussion. And I'd also like to thank you, our participants, for for really participating, as we can see from the Q&A. And if we've piqued your interest, then please do get in touch. We'd love to hear more from you. Thank you very much. And Toral, I will hand over to you to close.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Just to confirm that the recording will be on our YouTube channel as well as the YouTube channel of BGCI. And please do get in touch if you have any follow-ups. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.